World of Warcraft Classic has a total of 9 different classes to play, which all have their own unique playstyle. I personally like Warrior because my favourite thing to do in this game is charge face first into any mob that I see, and of course get absolutely rolled in PvP. However, a couple weeks back, I decided to start a new character on a new class for a couple of different reasons. Firstly, so that I can experience the game all over again, but from a completely different point of view. Secondly, I want to use this character to make gold, because as a warrior main, I don't really have many options for gold making outside of maybe doing professions. Now, one thing that has attracted me to playing mage is the weird things that it can do. Like when I was just starting out in Elwyn Forest, I used a fence to solo the mini-boss princess. Now, if I tried that on a warrior, I would indeed get folded in half. Now, mages are pretty notorious for doing some very broken things, and obviously, I want to do that too. I mean, how could I not? So for today, I have set myself the task of learning how to AOE farm in order to grind experience points. Now, AOE farming is where a mage camps a spawn for a load of mobs like gnolls, and then groups them up and uses a combination of abilities like Frost Nova in order to root all of the mobs in place, then backs up a significant amount and used Blizzard to deal massive AoE damage and continuously slow the mobs. Of course, abilities like Cone of Cold, Arcane Explosion, and Flame Strike can all be used pretty effectively as well. But me being a little level 22, the safest way for me to do this would be to simply Frost Nova and then Blizzard. Doesn't sound too hard, right? Is what I thought whilst I was doing my initial research. Logging into this character for the first time in a couple of weeks, we were in Thelsamar, which is relatively convenient since I wanted to head straight to the farming spot, which was located in the wetlands. Luckily, I also know a shortcut down this hill. With that out of the way, I wanted to just get stuck straight into trying it. So I rounded up as many mobs as I could, and we hit them with a good old Frosty Nova, which would immediately be followed up with a sketchy Blizzard, and then blinked away once they got too close. So far so good, I suppose. Then we hit them with another Frost Nova to root them again, but one of them resisted it, so I did what any good player would do and ran away. Okay, so my first attempt could have gone better, but trying to analyze what went wrong, apart from the fact that one of them resisted the Frost Nova, I ran out of mana too quickly. So I thought that trying not to use Blink as much would help me out. Now, going into my second attempt, my pool looked like this, which is clearly too spread out. Somehow though, it looked like it was all going to turn out okay. That was until I pulled a random slime behind me. Now, my third attempt, I actually was successful, and I'm thinking that was only because there was just 3 mobs, but still. However, I still wasn't able to kill them all without having to clean them up with my wand. Attempt number 4 didn't quite go to plan. Attempt number 5 also didn't go to plan, and I realized that if a mob resisted Frost Nova, it would probably be best if I just left and reset them. Attempt 6 was like my first step of refining my strategy. In order for me to fully utilize my mana and actually be able to kill the mobs in a timely manner, I would want to Frost Nova and get as far away as I possibly can before using Blizzard, and then ride out the Blizzard as long as possible, even if the placement wasn't perfect, which meant that I could actually use a second Blizzard before the mobs would get too close. On the next pull, I then realized that after using 2 full Blizzards, my Frost Nova would actually be off cooldown again, meaning I can root them again and then get to maximum range and use another Blizzard, which would usually kill all the mobs or leave them at low enough health so that I could kill them with a single use of my wand or fire blast. On the next attempt, I went back to my original farming spot since the mobs had respawned, and this time I really tried my best to group the mobs as tightly as I possibly could before using Frost Nova and getting as much distance as possible and sending 2 Blizzards to their face, then using Frost Nova and then one last Blizzard. And this was the perfect strategy for my level. Nova, Blizzard, Blizzard, Nova, Blizzard. So I did this for the next couple of hours, which got me all the way to level 23. But that was all the time that I had left to play, and I thought that was a pretty good point to log out at. But then I never logged back in. In fact, this character hasn't moved since I recorded this video. It's actually now just my bank alt, forever sitting in Stormwind collecting mail and shipping items. But why? It was all going so well. And well, that's because I created another account, Fart and Smell. And that's because there are just so many uses for a second account that I thought if I was going to level another character, I might as well do it on a different account. So I have spent the last few weeks slowly leveling and boosting this character to level 30. And now I can finally continue my mage journey pretty much where I left off, but this time we will be going to Duskwood to relearn how to AOE farm. This time it will be more difficult though. More mobs, casters, patrolling mobs, but it will be a good learning curve for the future. So Duskwood has quite a lot of farming spots, really anywhere in this general location. That also meant that there were going to be quite a lot of competition from other mages, but not just mages, since there was a couple of quests that involved players to come to this exact location and kill mobs. Luckily for me, I was playing at 5 AM like any normal member of society, so I decided to start off with this pack right here, and this is a nice and easy one to do since it was only about 4 mobs that were already close together, and using the same strategy as before, Nova, Blizzard, Blizzard, Nova, Blizzard, we were able to do this one very easily. Now since I was now level 30, I actually had enough mana that I could add a blink into my rotation, so it would now be Nova, Blink, Blizzard, Blizzard, Nova, Blizzard. Coming down to this spot here, which is literally just around the corner from the last spot, there is an absolute load of mobs to farm, and they respawned relatively quickly, but more often than not, there was also a little chest here to loot. And I can't lie, AoEing down this many mobs is so satisfying. Something only a warrior can dream of. And clearing this area took about 5 minutes each, since I would kinda stretch it into 3 different packs of mobs. Although I'm sure if you are anyone who isn't me, you'd probably be more than capable of clearing this entire area in one pool. And the good thing about this spot is that sometimes the mobs would just immediately respawn, and if they didn't, then I could just go back to the other spot around the corner quickly, and that would offer me a constant stream of experience points. So much XP in fact, that each level was only taking about an hour and a half. So I continued farming for a while, running back and forth from these 2 spots, when I realized that there was an entirely different spot right behind me the entire time. A spot with probably even more mobs than any of the other spots. I mean, look at that. That's like 10 mobs in one pool. And man, those numbers. And luckily enough, this spot seems to have the same thing as the last one, where sometimes the mobs just immediately respawn, and if they didn't, sometimes I would just quickly switch to another layer and I would have a pile of new Blizzard victims. So I did this all the way up until level 33. And you know, I was getting bored of the same mobs, the same zone, the same route, so I decided to go to another higher level spot. Welcome to Arathi, an absolutely beautiful zone of grass, hills, random elemental thingies, and the best mage AoE farming spot in the game. At least that's what I was told anyway. This is a very popular alliance only farm with loads and loads of orc peons, and we will most definitely be seeing other mages here. Luckily for me, it was 5 AM the next day, so I hopped on the next griffin to Arathi and got stuck straight into farming. I'm somewhat nervous trying out a new spot for the first time since I don't really know how to pull each pack of mobs, and how many mobs is too many. So it really is just a case of trial and error. So I decided to try out the field on the right side first since it looked to be more more isolated than the other one. Now, one thing I noticed almost immediately is that they were harder to kill, and that was probably due to them being a higher level than the duskwood werewolf things. So my rotation has now evolved into Nova, Blink, Blizzard, Blizzard, Nova, Blizzard, Blizzard. Basically just an extra Blizzard to compensate for the extra health points. The only thing I really don't like about this farming spot is that there are these random orc grunts that are roaming around the outside of the field, and occasionally you would run into them or they would respawn on top of you, and obviously that messes up your entire pool. But overall, this farm worked wonders. The amount of XP that I was getting from doing this was insane, especially since I was uncontested at this time in the morning. So I farmed here for about 4 hours until I hit level 35, and then we made a quick trip back to Stormwind so that I could repair all of my poor gear. And then I bought some consumables that might come in handy for AOE farming later. But then I had an idea. You know me, I have the attention span of a small duck, and I wanted a bit of a change. So I headed over to Scarlet Monastery to get in a few graveyard runs and library runs, because I wanted to maybe see if we could get a spell cleave group together, since I hadn't experienced that yet. Besides, there are quite a few nice pieces of gear that I could potentially pick up. I started off with a graveyard run since I had never actually done it before, and I thought that it would be worth it just to experience it. And you know, it was a lot different than what I was expecting. When I think of Scarlet Monastery, I usually think of these big grand halls filled to the brim with mobs, but this one was a lot different. It's very dark and has a gloomy vibe to it, and we were mostly killing spirits and ghouls. And I guess we were a spell cleave group, but it's not really what I was hoping for. I guess I'll just have to wait until I could go and do Armory and Cathedral, where the real numbers come out. I'm talking 1 healer, 4 mages, pulling the entire dungeon. That's what I'm looking forward to. Now, Graveyard only has 1 boss, and he's a pretty cool looking guy. He's a big spooky skeleton. He doesn't have anything that I'm interested in loot wise, but I still think it was worth it for the experience. Moving on to Library. Now, I was a lot more excited for this dungeon because, well, it would get me more XP, but also because there are a couple of different loot pieces that would be very nice to get. The Illusionary Rod and the Mantle of Dome. There is a chest piece, but I don't really care about that since the one I currently have is better. The dungeon starts basically the same as all of the other Scarlet Monastery dungeons in a large hallway. We would then clear our way into a nice large courtyard area and clear all the mobs there. We then go and take down the boss that I have never seen before, Houndmaster Loxy, who dropped the dog training gloves. And that got me thinking a bit. Would it be possible to make an entire set with the sole purpose of murdering beasts? I mean, you could have this thing, but you could also have like the collar from Halcyon in Lower Blackrock Spire. We continue through the Scarlet Halls and eventually make it to what I assume is the library part of the dungeon, before we then make it to the last boss, Arcanist Dome. And he does actually have a mechanic, very rare for Classic WoW, and it's just a simple LOS mechanic. He will cast Detonation, and you've simply just got to hide from him. And he dropped both the staff and the shoulders, and I won on both of these items. Very epic. 2 pretty big upgrades for me. I hope you all enjoyed today's video because I enjoyed making it. I always do. Gotta say, I am loving Mage. Mage is so much fun to play, and it's so different to what I'm used to with Warrior. Although I have to admit, it is quite difficult to make content for Mage in a story format, just because of how quick everything is. You know, you spend 5 levels farming here, you spend 5 levels farming there, and I'm not against that because it is quick and it is different, but it is difficult to make that into kind of a progressive story. But it is fun regardless. I am enjoying it a lot. Anyway, I think I'll stop yapping now. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all later.